Sarah, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
I am great. I'm so glad that we're getting to do this together. I've been following you for a long time. I've been reading your content and your articles for a long time. I love your writing. So this is exciting for us to get to sit down and talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we were just talking about, let's start with the hot topic of the moment, which is our good friend generative AI. I love how you put this of being kind of hot and cold on this. So let's pretend to be on the hot side for the moment.
Okay. Yes.
So what are you excited about with the potential with generative AI or the reality, whatever?
No, yeah. So so again, like I run really hot and cold on it. Like some days I am just like, this is going to change the world. This is absolutely change everything, how we like interact. It's on par with Web 2.0. It's on par with a mobile technology. Just it'll be one of those things like it'll just become so ingrained in how we interact with knowledge and information that we'll forget what life was like beforehand. And then it's some days I'm just kind of just like sick of hearing about it, especially because like so many a lot of the things coming out are like, oh, this will help you draft something, or and again, because this is why initially I really was not interested in any of this, because I like staring at a blank piece of paper and like brainstorming and writing and creating. So the idea of like editing something a computer wrote, I was absolutely not interested. Not worried about being replaced by technology. It's more like I just like doing it. I like to drive manual transmission. I am very much a control freak. But now seeing some of the tools coming out, like, okay, I get it. But also like the things I'm really excited about how it could do, from the access to justice point of view, because there are so many, just taking like a say a crap load of content, which is not very professional, but you have like all these regulations and laws that non-legal professionals need to access. You think you're a small business owner and you just kind of want to know some regulations for your business, but you don't like reading the CFR is not really practical for anyone to understand what's going on. But if you had like some way you could talk through it, you ask it questions and it provides an answer. That seems really cool. And also just the idea of like organizing and summarizing, and when I say access to justice, that's also one of those things that I think a lot of people think of, like a single mother getting kicked out of her apartment, and that's access to justice. And it is. Or, someone, on death row trying to get, their final appeal. And that is. But there's so many people who can't afford an attorney and they don't really need an attorney. Like it'd be dumb to pay $250 an hour for someone to summarize a CFR for you. But it's vitally important for their small business or just their, I want to put a fence in my backyard, but trying to access the zoning code is really hard, So it's just stuff like that is exciting. But also because I'm a librarian and a data person and otherwise, spend my life thinking about taxonomies and metadata, I know so much has to be in place before these systems are used. And it gets, I just think like, oh, this is going to be such a missed opportunity by legal if we don't get our houses in order ahead of time. It's like
you're tackling there.
What you feed it.
Yeah, that's an issue that I think is really undervalued, which is the effort that needs to go in the data, the data hygiene. Like it takes great data management for this stuff to work if it's going to work.
Yeah, and I'm a kind of I don't know, not type A, but like I am very anal retentive organizing. Like I just like, doesn't everyone have like 20 email folders that they file every email as soon as they get it? And doesn't everyone have like file folders and subfiles in their just personal document system? And after 15 years of professional life, including in libraries, I've realized no. I always love when I'm doing a Zoom call with someone. I have to like really, I have one of those faces that just like completely says what I'm thinking. But when doing a Zoom call and they're sharing their screen and like, if I see like more than 2 rows of tabs, I'm just like, oh, what are you doing with your life? But then like they collapse their screen, you see their desktop and it's just files and icons, and it's just, I physically recoil when I see that. And I just realize that people are just living their life this way. It's just like, and then you multiply that times how many thousands of attorneys and legal professionals there are in the world. It's just like, oh, we're never going to get these tools to work. It's just,
Well,
it's a little
it makes
distressing
it makes the KM professionals and firms much more valuable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they're kind of. I mean, that's the thing. Again. If I were to do a list of exciting things about LLMs and generative AI, and then the not exciting, the fact that everyone's saying, like, for years it feels like librarians and knowledge management professionals have been, not really appreciated, and also like so many things, like, well, everything's on the internet. You don't need a librarian now. It's like, oh no. Just today, like literally 2 hours ago, I guess the case text integration for Westlaw is rolling out, or Westlaw Precision. I don't know. It's either like Westlaw's homegrown LLM or how they're integrating case text is rolling out. But someone just like in the law, I'm in the private law libraries group as a member of the American Association of Law Libraries, and then that's a real. It's such good information, and it's kind of nice since it is a kind of a private listserv. Someone just said, noted. I used it. I asked, I worked with it. They got me some really great cases, but I went back to my old Boolean searching and I found like 3 more cases. And guess which ones the attorney cited? It was those were like the much better one. So I think as part of all this base layer of work that has to get done, prep work, you're very much like cooking, the mise en place. You got to get all your, stuff cut up and ready to throw into the pot. There's such work that has to get done before that we're going to need people who have an understanding of knowledge management and how information is found and used. So there's just going to be an implosion or an explosion of need for librarians and KM professionals, but also just, there's like, at some point the work will be good enough by these tools, but right now, still humans are providing a lot of great work that has not been met by these tools. Yeah.
No, it hasn't. Now, of course, it's very early, and in the big picture, I agree with you in the idea that this is AI in general is as significant as the internet, but short term, there's a pretty big gap between the way people are talking about it and the reality of what the technology can actually do today,
right?
And the problems that exist in that technology right now.
Yeah, and even it was Nikki Schaefer, who I work for. She just posted, I think it was on LinkedIn today, just the idea that people are trying to nail down, products and like internal tools made with these models, but the models keep changing, and like how it's so. It's really kind of shocking to remember like how early days we really are, because it seemed like all of a sudden it's just like a light switch flipped, and everyone's like, well, this is how the world is now. We're going to be using these tools. But also it's really funny because I'm now like old enough. Like I feel like I've been feeling my middle age a lot lately, that I do remember from even more so, like both like when Web 2.0 kind of hit in 2006, and then again, mobile technology, 2009, 2008, how like everyone was coming up with an app, or everyone was like coming up with some sort of tool using Web 2.0 that people were adding content to, or like a new social network or a new, and it's funny, like every time I like log into LinkedIn or use Blue Sky, someone's like, hey, now that OpenAI has that developer tool set thing that's available, like I made a ChatGPT bot using this book, and it's great, but also it's like, like 99.9% of these will never see the light of day after like 6 months, but it's great to see people experimenting. I actually really love that about this world. But it's also just like funny just to see like, oh, we're having this big explosion, and then like 99% are not going to survive and be actually used after a year or come to anything out of it. But it doesn't mean it's wasted effort, but it's just kind of funny to see all this experimentation and everyone kind of like suddenly excited about things again. But also like with the apps, like nine of all like phone apps ever made, like 95% of those didn't need to be an app.
Didn't need to be app and never got used.
Yeah.
And I think AI is going to be so much more useful when we don't talk about it as AI anymore. And LLMs will be much more useful when nobody's using that acronym and it's
Yeah.
just built in. Like everybody uses AI today, but you don't talk about it that way. I mean, if you used Google Maps, you used AI. If you're running Outlook, you used AI. You just don't think of it that way. And so
Right.
it's that deeper embedding that's really going to make it valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's so funny how, again, not being a computer science person, but know it being like on the edges of technology and stuff. Like for so long, it was like, nothing's ever going to pass the Turing test. Like something about ChatGTP, like actually the Turing test is, we're a lot more gullible than we thought we were, I guess, but just like how people are like, oh, it's talking to me. It knows all these answers. It's writing this stuff. And it's like, no, it's not. It's using predictive probability to like guess what the next word is going to be. But how people who absolutely should know better are really just like mystified by it. And I don't know if it's the chat function that's doing it or the fact that it goes so fast, relatively speaking, that you're just, if you're doing like, you're texting and it like suggests the word or you're using an Outlook. But here it's like 5 paragraphs in 30 seconds or even less than that. Maybe that's what makes it so magical seeming to people, but it's funny how it just really captured the imagination. But I think it's also, the fact that with Web 2.0, not so much, but like with mobile technology, you really had to have some tech chops to build an app. I mean, there did become some like app builders after like a year or two, but this was made like anyone could just like make an account on OpenAI's website and start playing around. Which is exciting. Like I love that. Like I mean, don't put like I don't love it when people are putting client data in there or filing stuff with courts that they get out of that. But I love the fact that the interface is comfortable enough that you don't have to be a techie to use it and experiment. And again, it's like Web 2.0, how that really kind of lowered barriers to entry. This is basically Web 2.0 for data analysis, is how I've been thinking of it.
Well, and that point you just made about the chat user experience, I think is really important. And I think that's an underappreciated element of generative AI, that user experience is going to be very valuable in lots of other contexts, just because it is a big jump forward in NLP of actually being able to understand what it is you're saying, and therefore having the computer be able to help you, even if it's not generative AI after that point that is what's creating the
Right.
response. It's the part of understanding you that is could end up being just as big as an advance.
Yeah, and I think also just that it's less scary to ask a computer a question. I mean, that was one of those, I went to law school first and then I became a librarian. And one of the better things to come out of becoming a librarian is that I lost any sort of ego about asking questions because everyone asked me questions for, I get asked questions when I was a practicing librarian. I got asked questions all day. It's not a big deal. But I remember like prior to that, and again, this shows how old I am. I would drive around, like instead of like stopping at a gas station to ask directions, never would do that. I was too stubborn and I would try to force will it. And I think that's kind of again one of the nice fun benefits of this type of technology is that it really like it's just you privately asking questions and then privately getting questions. You don't have to worry about embarrassment, especially in a law firm environment. Like junior attorneys, associates who are scared to look dumb in front of your computer. No one's going to know, but you don't like your partner will never know that you had no idea what this meant. And it like the idea that it's a way for people to self-educate in a more comfortable, less intimidating environment, I think is really kind of interesting and how that's going to affect new lawyer training, new lawyer, professional development. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight.
Yeah, and also just like for again members of the public, and I think like those of us who work around attorneys every day or who may be attorneys forget how scary it is to be an attorney to the outside world. Like people think attorney and they don't think someone sitting in, wearing sweatpants and a tie-dye shirt in the middle of, a spare bedroom in Indiana. They think like someone who wears a suit and, is gruff and costs $500 an hour to talk to. But yeah, I mean, it just really humanizes the ability to get at legal knowledge and legal information for people. And it's less, again, also a lot cheaper than going into an attorney office or going even like, because that was one of the things with being a librarian, like how intimidated people would be to come into a law library if they were a member of the public. And, and we make it that way. And like, we've got all the books, all the West reporters that look the same, that, it's like a very intense environment for an outsider. And that this kind of makes a new front door for a library or a legal services organization that people can get the information and knowledge they need without having to physically be anywhere, but also emotionally be anywhere. That might be kind of hard for them to be.
So what do you think of Brian Inkster's pushback on generative AI? He's a wonderful curmudgeon when it comes to some of this new technology. Document automation has been available in legal for 30 years, and it's implemented at some level, but not anywhere to the extent that it could be used, right? Like there could be huge advances that come from document automation, and that has not happened. So why is this new shiny thing going to be any different?
No, I mean, he's not wrong. Like, that's the thing. And that's why I always kind of feel like I get excited and it's like, oh, right. It's like, the fact, and especially because like with document automation, you have to have your templates and everything kind of your mise en place, your everything all chopped up and ready to go. And then also you have to have your attorneys use it. And I mean, that's the thing, like, Greg Lambert, who is a law firm librarian out of Texas, known him for years. He's a good guy, but he always says like all problems are communication problems. And I kind of, very much so, yes. But also like almost all legal tech problems are actually human problems. So like it's not, again, like with the thing that everyone talks about, that lawyer who used ChatGPT to write a brief and it turns out everything was wrong and they lied to the court. It wasn't ChatGPT's fault. It was never meant to do that. It was his fault that he did it. And like the fact that document automation software is not used is not the software's fault. And it's not necessarily even a problem that it's not used, although it could be used and it'd be great if it was. It's because, for whatever reason, the attorneys and other professionals that have access to the software either, they weren't trained on it, they don't see the benefit to use it, they don't enjoy the process of using it. There is something there that the people are not taking advantage of it. And it's not necessarily that they're wrong, but it's not happening. There's something we need to look at the people part of the equation, not necessarily always the software part of the equation. And that's the thing, like there's a great possibility. And that's what kind of makes me sad about ChatGPT and LLMs and all these tools, is that because there is so much work that has to go into getting it to work right and getting it to, be trained on your data, and your data has to be ready to go, and it might end up being a huge wasted opportunity, because especially on the access to justice front, where so much knowledge that a member of the public might need is just not any way accessible that could even be trained. I mean, it's really scary. This is one of the things I've worked on in my life, is that getting access to primary law. Like, as you think in America, especially, that it'd be super easy to know what law governs you. And it's like, even like when I started all this madness like 15 years ago, it was really, really hard to get things, even like case law and legislation from the national level, let alone at a state level. And that's improved so much, but it's still really hard to even find like your local city ordinances or your local zoning laws, or, Carl Malaman has done great work getting, like building codes, and those sorts of things are all just called incorporated by reference. It's a private industry will create a code, like this is how fire, we call it fire retardant or fire extinguishers have to be made. And then they like the private industry builds and they sell it for money, but then like the government says, oh, we're just incorporating all this by reference. But you still have to actually access it, you have to pay several $100,000 sometimes. So yeah, he's working to make that now. Like, no, if it's incorporated by reference, it's public law and needs to be accessible. but yeah, I mean, there's like still huge amounts of data locked away, like not even like even then like to the point that it can be understood by software and parsed and then recombulated and spit out through a interface using an LLM. So yeah, there's so much prep work that has to get done that it's entirely possible it will be like, you know, how document automation tools just aren't used as often as they could be.
Right. All that prep
Yeah,
work just reminds me so much of the document, the challenges with getting document automation really fully deployed.
yeah, and and that's the thing. Like, realize one of the things, having started off more in the small law world and then moved to big law, like realizing like how many templates like a firm would have. It's just overwhelming to think of. Yeah, I mean, it's just so much work.
It is.
And that's the thing. It's again, because it's not like exciting, doing the drudgery of organizing. People kind of want the immediate payoff, like here's a brief or here's a contract, and like no, you got to really break it down and tag it. you know,
So there's
and get all the
another
different.
not exciting area that all this really applies to that I'm passionate about, which is all the back office functionality that just keeps firms running.
No, yeah, yeah. I mean, and again, like, well, I have this idea that I hope someone steals and does, but like one of the things I would love to see, get so I have like many things that I can only have like so many passions, and I feel like I have a lot, but the things that really get me excited when I start talking about it, one is access to justice, especially people who just can't afford attorneys for basic issues or don't need an attorney for that issue, but also just like new lawyer and old lawyer professional development. And one of the things I think would be so fun in a way is like, so you upload a document to your Net Documents or your iManage account. And it says, oh, hey, this is this type of document. And these frequently require redaction. Do you know how to redact? No? Okay. So we're gonna like now tag into our our Skillburst account or our other sort of like CPE, professional development service that we pay money for that no one ever looks at. Here's a 5-minute video on how to redact this document. Just things that just tie your different external systems together, but how it can make new lawyer happiness better. And also just like the tools that, because one of the things that I always thought was funny, or not funny, but like awful or awful is new attorneys, they're trying to get the try to figure out what they're doing, and like a partner will kind of find their associate and like give all his work to that associate, whereas the associate B is like starving for work, but like associate A plays golf with him. So it's like, oh, so like a way to make, I guess it's kind of like an overarching subject matter is, how can technology be used to make the world more equitable and to like somehow fix some of the mistakes we've made in the past. And if there's a way to take these tools, which are really good at analyzing data and finding that, like, is there a way to make sure that younger associates are getting appropriate workloads and are getting ways of seeing like what skills they have, what skills they need, is there something in there that can be done? But it's all like, and also just like making sure they know how, like, trained on basic skills that we don't teach in law school, like how to do a timesheet, how to do, make sure you're doing like some of these basic technical skills. Like, do you know how to send a meeting invite in Outlook? Because I've worked with new grads and a lot of them really don't know how to do that. Something it's real basic, like how to be an adult, adulting.ai.
They skip some important things in school, but in the end, if you're at a law firm, you still got to enter your time, and bills have to go out, and money has to come in, and the basic machine has to keep working.
Right, yeah, and it's very it's been a while since I've taught in law schools, but that kind of basic stuff is just, you got to figure it out on your own, or hopefully someone will show you the ropes. But yeah, if it doesn't get done, you don't get paid, and that's really important. Yeah,
so another area that is, to me, is really related to this is standards, and SALI is a great example of that, which I know you have a lot of appreciation for. So let's chat about that for a moment, because I think that's think that's huge to have a standard taxonomy in this market.
No, I mean that's yeah. So I can't believe how successful it's been. I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, I first heard about it. I think it was before I came to Rain and Court, even where I was just kind of. I've always again really like taxonomies, really like organizing things, really like open content and open things that make it easier to collaborate outside of your organization. And I always say we fly farther and faster together. Just try to. What are these tools out there that can do that? And the fact that SALI having a standardized taxonomy for students, it could be everything connected to the world of law, is going to be so helpful. And I grew up in a town of 900 people in Appalachian, Ohio, and so I get so like one of the things I like pinch myself about is like how I get to work with people from all over the world, and that's really, like the fun thing about legal tech is that it is international. A lot of like law stuff that you can't even like leave your state here in the United States, but legal tech is international. But again, like every jurisdiction does things a little differently. We call things different things, and the idea of having a taxonomy that would just kind of like smooth the edges and make it a universal translator between organizations, between countries, between various types of technological things. It's really exciting. And it will make your, because that's the thing, we were talking before the show that I kind of came to this world as, started off as an academic law librarian, and this is 2006, 2007. And at that point in time, there really was Lexis and Westlaw, and the power balance was kind of skewed. And, that was like, I was like, start off my career kind of like not scared of vendors, but also just like feeling like they were this giant that just stomped all over the smaller libraries, and we didn't have a good relationship. And part of it was because like they Westlaw and Lexis went on a buying spree in like the late 90s and early 2000s, and just consolidated pretty much every legal publisher in the United States. And so I've always been hesitant about consolidations. One of the benefits of a consolidation, such as like what Litera has been doing the past few years, is that in theory all these different tools work together. Like all the Litera suite works together in theory. And same thing with Bless, like all their little product things work together. But the fact that a standardized taxonomy will allow you to maintain, if you don't want to buy the Swiss Army knife of legal tech, you want to have your separate spoon, knife, and fork, you can do that, and they can still all interact, and all your systems can still talk together if we have a standardized kind of taxonomy between them. One of this tortured metaphor I've been using for literally 10 years at this point is Disney World. So I actually, for people who went to ILTACon this year, you made it over to the Magic Kingdom. There's different worlds in Disney World. There's like Land of Tomorrow, there's Frontierland, there's the fairy tale world, and they're all kind of separate. But what you might not know is that underneath Disney World or Magic Kingdom, there's a series of tunnels. And that's why you never see Mickey taking a smoke break or really too much like anything unpleasant in the Magic Kingdom, because they send it all to the tunnels. And in law, we have big law, we have small law, we have the courts and stuff, but we have our tunnels underneath, and that's all knowledge and data and all these different pieces of information and data that have to talk to each other. And that's what legal tech is in some ways. But you need like a standardized way for all these things to talk to each other, or they wouldn't. So yeah, I'm thrilled to death with the progress of SALI. Kudos to everyone who's been beating that drum, and again, Damien, who's been on this road show for like 2 years. And it's really, I think, the fact once I saw that they had iManage and Thompson and NetDocuments signed on, and then plus like a bunch of big law firms. I think Litera signed on too. I don't want to not include them as well. I was like, okay, this is going to work, because once you get these, it's kind of like in academia, like once Harvard and Yale say they're going to do something, everyone does it.
Right.
Once you have Thompson and signed on, okay, iManage is doing it. All right, we'll do it too. We'll make sure we can talk to that.
We've got to get rid of all those little individual tunnels and have some shared tunnels to make that work, right? That's the key.
I think like if I had any advice for a new legal tech company, is just to make sure you can work with that kind of data and make sure you're not going to be a little island in in a greater universe of a law firm or a greater universe of a legal organization, because you will eventually be voted off the island, or you just will no longer be there.
Which will be good. So last subject for you. So you're working at Legal Tech Hub now, and you have this experience with legal tech vendors for a long time. So just what are your thoughts about what's happening in legal tech as a whole?
The one thing I think is so funny, especially when I came from small law, access to justice world at the ABA and legal ed, and I got a job at Rain and Court, and I was like, this is going to be amazing. Because honestly, like most of my firsthand knowledge of big law, like I knew about it, but like in-person observation was like when a big law firm would host a legal hackers event, and I'd be like, oh wow, they have Pellegrino in their in their break room for people. This is fancy. And so I assumed like legal tech for big law would be fancy. And just realizing how much so many legal tech vendors are pretty small, actually. I mean, there's a lot of, there's like the ones like again, like the iManages and the Laterras that have hundreds headcount. But a lot of them are just like, I always say it's like the world's worst sitcom. It's two lawyers and a developer, because again, people have like this idea, you see like the chattering classes on LinkedIn and Twitter. They're always like, oh, these legal tech people overpromise and they're just selling a dream. And like so many legal tech vendors I've talked to are really just like former practicing attorneys, or sometimes they're still practicing. And they're like, yeah, I had this problem like over and over again. And I just, again, like so many of it, like the tech guy on these things, they're like a brother-in-law. And they were just like, my brother-in-law was like, we should do a company about this. And they did, and it's just like a pain point that they personally had, and realizing like, hey, other attorneys have this pain point. We should fix that. So that's the thing. And also just like, again, realizing with big law, it's not like, it's still like so much stuff like hinges on an overworked associate not messing up an Excel spreadsheet that they've been tracking this $1 billion transaction in. It's just like, holy cow, just like realize, there's a very famous, KXAD, what is it? It's like a web comic about nerdy stuff. And there's this one where it's like this pile of boxes and stuff, and everything, it's kind of like very precariously stacked. And like the one thing kind of holding it up, and like the title is like the internet, and like the thing pointing at the one little box holding it up is like this guy named Steve in Nebraska that's been running this, this time clock thing unpaid for 20 years. And like that's kind of like so many like legal deals, and like the one thing holding it together is this 28-year-old has got like 10 hours of sleep in the past week. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And that's a thing, just like, and again, like just how like, I don't say unimpressive legal tech is. And I guess also, so maybe that's why people are excited about ChatGPT. But like the things that, I mean, I don't like it's not that it's unimpressive, but it's like a practice manager or a transaction management software. It's like, oh, we're just seeing where these pieces of paper are and who has signed them yet. Okay. And like, and it's like, but like when you show a practicing attorney, they're like, oh my gosh, that's great. And I think that was, when I worked at Rain and Court, I relied a lot on Christian and Sam, who were both practicing attorneys in big law context. And I was, I would like write up my stuff and like run it by them, or, sometimes. And I was like, well, if you saw a demo too, like, what were you excited about that? A lot of times like really simple things like, oh, you could like easily compare side by side. And I was like, not the, the natural language processing that the tool used to like, really, analyze the contract. Then we kind of like side by sides. It's easy to use. I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Like, so much of legal tech is really just kind of base. I mean, like, again, yeah, it's not like sending people to the moon. It's just like making sure papers get signed, and but that's important and it's good. But it's also just like, oh, okay. So it's just kind of funny sometimes. It's just like the big innovation is like we're able to find out all the paper that can get signed in a contract. It's like, oh, we found all the signing papers. That's actually really, really hard to do. And like how many, just like realizing not that long ago, like that was done by an associate and piles of paper in a big boardroom and just like walking around those, stack, making stacks of paper. It's like, oh, well, yes, I can see why this is an improvement now. Okay. It's just.
It also means there's lots of opportunity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, And so, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think that why everyone is all of a sudden like with a new wave of AI is all of a sudden things provide an opportunity to get creative. Like nothing was really creative before about legal tech. It's more, I mean, I don't want to say that nothing was because there's probably something big I'm forgetting about. But like a lot of it's just, e-discovery. It's like, oh, we're just using AI to find related content that we are looking for. Or transaction management. Oh, we're just making sure everything gets signed that needs to get signed. Um, and like nothing's been forgotten about. But this is all of a sudden like, oh, we could, it's and not even just like the text generation, but just like also the image generations and the idea that you could, create transcript. I mean, just I think it's all of a sudden like every sudden, just you kind of like that episode of The Simpsons where everyone's worried they had the gray clothes and then it rains and everything becomes rainbow all of a sudden. I think that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. Like all of a sudden we're like, oh wow, there's some new possibilities out there we'd never even considered possible.
Well, there's always a pretty significant gap between consumer technology and enterprise technology. And so what we see in big law, right, is just that enterprise technology applied in this very specific context. And the reason I care so much about the plumbing behind that is that it doesn't matter how shiny the surface you put it on top. If you don't actually figure out the glue between those pieces, then the rainbow is never going to show through because you got to have you have to actually have the data in order for it to work. As circling back to where we started.
No, yeah, and that's the thing. I just again, it's like anyone listening to this, it's not too late. There's always you can always get your data in order. Like it's never today tomorrow's the first day of the rest of your life. Start figuring out how to do that.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best ways in which legal tech can play a role in creating a defensible competitive advantage for a law firm. Because any law firm of any size, but particularly when you talk about big law, that does a good job of that is going to have such a competitive advantage relative to their peers that is worth investing in.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. And I'm seeing how law firms are creating product now, and they always kind of have, but it feels like now there's a lot more external product being created by law firms, or with the idea that they're either going to spin it off or just have it part of their like when they're working with their corporate clients as like a not just like seconding your attorneys, but also seconding your software. So it's kind of an interesting thing to see, just because creating software is different than running a law firm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mildly way to put it. It's like creating a software product and running a legal tech company is different than running a law firm. So see how that.
I've been really impressed with what some of the innovation groups in law firms are doing, and a lot of that translates into technology and applications that connect the firm to their clients, and it makes them very sticky with those clients.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Sarah, this has been a ton of fun. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to talk to people. Yeah. I enjoyed it too.
Great session. Thank you.
Thank you.